Hello everyone, today I will show you a drama film from 2022 titled In Our Prime. Spoilers ahead, watch out and take care. In the most prestigious high school in South Korea, where the 1% gathers, Han Ji-woo fails to fit in. He used to be the smartest student in his old humble school, but here, surrounded by geniuses, he is one step from the bottom of the class, especially in math, which is considered the most important subject to get into college. His classmates are rich, so they can afford tutors and boot camps, but Ji-woo is on student welfare and can't afford such things. His math teacher, Mr. Kim Gun-ho, reminds him that these grades won't be enough to get into a prestigious college and asks Ji-woo to consider transferring. One night, Ji-woo's roommates give him money so he can sneak out and get some snacks and alcohol for everyone, but on his way back, Ji-woo is caught by the night guard, Lee Hok-sung. The following morning, Mr. Kim tries to get him to confess who else was part of this plan, but Ji-woo values loyalty and stays silent. This catches his classmate, Park Bo-rum's attention, but also gets him temporarily kicked out of the dorms. After class, his roommates try to give him some money as thanks and are shocked to hear Ji-woo doesn't want it because they're friends. They discuss the possibility of bringing in late-night snacks through other routes, but this has been impossible since Hok-sung started to work as a guard. They call him the Tsukami officer because he's a North Korean defector. Later, Hok-sung goes to see his doctor, who tells him that working as a night guard isn't good for his health, and relying on sleeping pills causes his biorhythm to be off. Hok-sung reminds him that it's the only job he can get as a defector, so unless the doctor can get him a position somewhere else, he'll take the pills. Afterward, Hok-sung returns to his lonely apartment, where he spends his time feeding his turtle, drinking strawberry milk, and doing Sudoku puzzles. The following day, Ji-woo is kicked out of the dorms. Bo-rum teases him on his way out, saying she thought he could be more than a loser, but it seems she was wrong. A couple of hours later, Ji-woo has returned to his family apartment, which he cleans before his mother comes back from work. She's a widow who has always worked very hard to raise him, so she's very proud of seeing her son in such an important uniform. Not having the heart to tell her he needs a place to sleep, Ji-woo says instead that he only came to visit her and must return to the school before it gets too late. It begins raining on his way back, so Ji-woo tries to hide in the school's abandoned lab, but he's found by Hok-sung. The guard feels bad when he hears Ji-woo doesn't have a place to stay, so he invites him back to his office. While Ji-woo sleeps, Hok-sung finds the very hard math homework that Ji-woo couldn't finish. As soon as the sun rises, Hok-sung kicks Ji-woo out. The boy goes to his math class and is shocked to find his homework has been done by Hok-sung. Not only that, all the answers are correct. Bo-rum notices this and wants Ji-woo to show the teacher, but he asks her to keep quiet. After class, Ji-woo goes to thank Hok-sung for the help and asks him to teach him how to do it, but Hok-sung just kicks him out again. Later, in the studying room, Ji-woo hears even his classmates' private tutors have trouble with some of these math problems, which indicates how special Hok-sung is. One afternoon, while he's taking out the trash, Hok-sung overhears the teachers talking about welfare students with uncaring parents and inferior complexes, and Mr. Kim includes Ji-woo on the list. When Ji-woo approaches him to ask for tutoring again, Hok-sung tells him it's better to transfer and that self-pity isn't a badge to carry because it gets you fixated on tragedy. Ji-woo explains how angry it makes him that others can have opportunities he can't, so Hok-sung gives in and agrees to tutor him. He only asks for Ji-woo to pay him with strawberry milk. The next day, Hok-sung visits his friend, Ji-chow, who helped him come to South Korea because he works as Seoul's North Korean defector support lead. Together, they play board games and chat about life. When Ji-chow gets Hok-sung the lamps he needed as a gift, Hok-sung insists on paying for them because he didn't come to this country for charity. When night falls, Hok-sung puts the lamps inside the abandoned lab so he can teach Ji-woo their own secret. There are 3 rules Ji-woo must follow. 1. Nobody must know about these classes. 2. No questions other than math. 3. Hok-sung will teach math, but he doesn't want to hear anything about grades or tests. After Ji-woo promises to follow all the rules, Hok-sung gives him the first exercise, finding the area of a triangle. Ji-woo solves it quickly, pointing out this is a middle school problem, but Hok-sung tells him he's wrong by drawing a full circle around the triangle. Feeling tricked, Ji-woo thinks it's unfair because Hok-sung has given him the wrong question. But Hok-sung's point is that he's approaching problem-solving the wrong way. Yes, finding the answer is important, but understanding what the question is, that's what is even more important. Math is all about the process of finding a solution. When Ji-woo shows an understanding of the concept, Hok-sung calls it epsilon as he has a flashback of how, as a younger person, he and a friend received a fancy pan as a prize for their academic success. Epsilon means small and insignificant, trivial even. After the class is over, since Ji-woo still doesn't have a place to go, Hak-sung allows him to stay with him. Ji-woo discovers that Hak-sung loves listening to classical music on an old cassette player, so they chat about classical composers for a while, which helps Hak-sung avoid Ji-woo's questions about his past. The cassette is worn out and has bad sound quality, so Ji-woo plays the songs on his phone, the quality of which fascinates Hak-sung and helps him sleep deeply for the first time in ages. In fact, he stays in bed until late the next morning, and when he wakes up, Ji-woo has already left for class. Mr. Kim has some important news for his math students. Instead of having finals, his class will participate in the prestigious Pythagoras math competition, which will count as their exam. The teens aren't happy about this since they only have 2 months to practice, but Mr. Kim expects them all to win gold. Ji-woo goes to see Hak-sung every day for math classes, and Borum begins noticing how often Ji-woo purchases strawberry milk, almost as if he were an addict. One evening, there's a particularly hard exercise that Ji-woo needs to know the technique to solve, but Hak-sung explains he expects him to add it all up manually. 3 hours later, Ji-woo manages to solve it, so Hak-sung shows him something special. Famous mathematician Bernhard Riemann calculated 38 decimals of the square root of 2 by hand to become intimate with the solving process, which you can't do by just memorizing a formula. This is greatly helpful when it comes to a better understanding of math. Hak-sung refuses to tell Ji-woo if his answer is right or wrong because his homework will be to discover it himself. That's the job of a mathematician. As the weeks pass, Ji-woo improves his math skills more and more every day. One afternoon, he receives some devastating news. A close friend and fellow welfare student is transferring back to his old school, admitting having come here was never worth it. Now, Ji-woo has some thinking to do about his own situation, and Borum tries to hear him out. But he feels like she's making fun of him by saying they're in the same situation when she's actually a rich kid too. Their conversation is interrupted when Borum's mother comes to pick her up. When they get in the car, Borum is scolded for hanging out with a welfare kid. Borum is technically on welfare too because of her divorced parents, but she isn't on financial aid, so it isn't really the same. Her mother also scolds her for listening to piano music because she wants Borum to concentrate on her studies, so she's hired Mr. Kim to be Borum's private tutor, which is illegal. Later that night, Ji-woo tells Hak-sung about his friend and wonders if he should transfer too. Hak-sung encourages him not to give up and reminds him that the most important thing to succeed is not intelligence but courage to prevail until the end. To prove his point, he shows Ji-woo the exercises he corrected. While there are some mistakes in the final solutions, the boy has correctly learned the process to solve them. That same night, Ji-woo's suspension ends, so he gets to go back to the dorms, but he admits missing sharing a space with Hak-sung. The next day, Borum gives him strawberry milk with an apology note, and when he gets distracted, she follows him to the abandoned lab and discovers a secret. After thanking Hak-sung for taking care of Ji-woo, she asks if she can come over from time to time, and Hak-sung accepts as long as she keeps it a secret too. Borum also calls him Kami Officer, and this confuses Hak-sung. He may be from North Korea, but he never served in the military for a reason he doesn't bother to explain. He was exempted. At that moment, they notice a group of students sneaking around the campus, but having learned what happened to Ji-woo last time, Hak-sung decides to do nothing about it. Another evening, Ji-woo asks Hak-sung why he studied math so hard. He explains that at first, he did it for the scholarship and the sake of his family, but the more he learned about it, the more beautiful he found it. So, he fell in love with it. Then they call Borum to join Hak-sung at the piano so he can teach her a cool little trick, assigning a note to each digit. The two of them make a beautiful melody by playing the number pi. During the next math class, Ji-woo corrects Mr. Kim's answer to an exercise using the logic Hak-sung taught him about incorrect questions. However, Mr. Kim scolds him for it. The answer may be correct, but it's not what the examiner intended, and that's the only thing the students need to worry about, giving the solution that is expected, not the one that is right. It's all about test technique. But Ji-woo doesn't accept this and replies he'll still give the right answer on the test. Considering him rude for such an attitude, Mr. Kim makes him stand outside the door for the rest of the class. Afterward, Ji-woo informs Mr. Kim that he won't be transferring. In the afternoon, during another of Hawk Sung's visits, Ji Chao gives him a smartphone so he's easier to find. Hawk Sung happily shows it to Ji Woo later, and the boy can't help noticing he's reading long thesis on this tiny screen. To help, Ji Woo asks a classmate to sneak him into the computer lab so he can print the entire document and gift it to Hawk Sung. The next day is the Pythagoras test. Ji Woo is doing wonderfully thanks to Hawk Sung's lessons, and while Borum starts well enough by remembering the music, she soon gets frustrated. Pressure takes a toll on her, and she ends up leaving the classroom without finishing the exam. Her mother makes her stay home to avoid shame and lies to the school, saying that they'll go away on a trip. When Ji Woo tries to contact her, all his texts are ignored. In the evening, Ji Woo and Hawk Sung attend a classical concert that Borum got them free tickets for, as her family's company sponsors it. Borum never shows up, but at least Hawk Sung enjoys the concert so much that he's moved to tears. Afterward, Hawk Sung invites Ji Woo to have dinner at his place, which makes Ji Woo realize this is the first time he's seen Hawk Sung eat. That same night, someone leaks the Pythagoras test online, causing trouble for the teachers who now must find the student responsible if they don't want the education board to fire them. Meanwhile, Ji Woo and Hawk Sung visit a bookstore to do some shopping, and a stranger recognizes Hawk Sung. This man also comes from North Korea and calls Hawk Sung doctor, remembering him from the days when Hawk Sung taught classes at the university he attended. The man also calls Hawk Sung the famous mathematical genius and thinks Ji Woo is his son, which puts them in an awkward position. Hawk Sung thanks the man for the memory and quickly leaves the store, refusing to answer Ji Woo's questions. When they get home, Hawk Sung reflects on the good times he shared with his son, Lee Tyan, like having dinner together, getting the turtle, and buying strawberry milk because it was Tyan's favorite. The next day, some important news breaks on TV. The Riemann hypothesis, one of the most significant mathematical problems, is about to be solved by a famous North Korean mathematician named Lee Hawk Sung. So far, it's still under review by a board of scholars. Professor Oh on TV tells the story of how he entered a math Olympiad as a kid and met Hawk Sung, who represented the North, while Oh represented the South. They both received a fancy pen from a famous mathematician, and Oh still has it to this day. Both Ji Cole and Ji Woo watch the news, and Ji Woo finds Hawk Sung first to ask him about it. However, Hawk Sung becomes angry and asks him never to mention the Riemann hypothesis again. Meanwhile, Mr. Kim is dealing with the test incident because his reputation is on the line. But when a coworker reviews the security tapes after a student spread some rumors, he finds his salvation. The next day, Mr. Kim calls Ji Woo to show him a recording of him sneaking out of the computer lab with printed sheets in his hands. Ji Woo tries to explain that it's unrelated, but he has no way to prove it. Between the tape evidence and the fact that he's suddenly become much better at math in a few months, no one will believe him. So Mr. Kim offers him a deal. If Ji Woo agrees to transfer, he won't make his involvement public. Sadly, the rumors about Ji Woo leaking the test still spread, and Borum gets upset because she knows the truth. Gu Chul is also facing trouble. North Korea is angry that the South is taking credit for Hawk Sung's achievements, especially since these discoveries are linked to military encryption. The niche wants Gu Chul to convince Hawk Sung to appear on TV to clear things up. Hawk Sung's name is now all over the news, and an old colleague even visits him to try to convince him to return to the North. However, he puts his foot in his mouth when he admits he's asking because bringing Hawk Sung back would earn him forgiveness, which only angers Hawk Sung by bringing up what happened to his son. Ji Cole visits Hawk Sung to apologize for not being able to keep the niche off his back, but Hawk Sung remains thankful for all the years of protection. As Hawk Sung is packing to leave town, Ji Cole returns to him the research document Hawk Sung tried to throw away years ago. Ji Cole saved it because it was too valuable to discard. At that moment, Ji Woo arrives, but he decides to stay outside when he hears yelling. Hawk Sung is angry because it was this research that cost him his son's life, so he refuses to put it on TV. After Ji Cole leaves, Ji Woo tries to talk to Hawk Sung, but the older man lashes out at him, refusing to acknowledge they are anything more than tutor and student. Afterward, Ji Woo receives a call from an upset Borum, who doesn't understand why he's letting them frame him like this, but Ji Woo simply tells her it's over and hangs up. Meanwhile, Hawk Sung arrives at the bus station, And when he thinks he sees his son's face in a random stranger, he begins to remember the night Tyan died. After getting into another fight for defending fellow defectors, Tyan began arguing with his father, accusing him of escaping to the south for selfish reasons, because he didn't do it when his mother was sick with tuberculosis. Hawk Sung insisted he did it to give his son a better life, but Tyan pointed out that doing entry-level jobs and being treated like dirt was far from a better life for a scholar. After wishing his father to enjoy his life with only math as company, Tyan ran away and tried to swim back to the north, but he was shot on sight by Border Patrol. Back to Ji-woo, he sneaks into his home to use his mother's stamp on the transfer papers while she's sleeping. The next morning, he hands the papers to Mr. Kim, who tells him he made the right choice. Hawk Sung is hiding in a hotel while the niche searches for him to take him to the TV show, and he's surprised when he gets a call from Borum, telling him about Ji-woo's transfer. That afternoon is the Pythagoras Award ceremony. Ji-woo is on his way out of school, but Borum suddenly arrives and drags him to the auditorium, stealing his stuff in the process. Professor Oh opens the ceremony with a speech about the recently proven theory, and that's when Hawk Sung decides to interrupt. Having rushed over to the school after freeing his turtle in the river, he presents his pen as proof of his identity. Professor Oh welcomes him with open arms and allows him to give a speech as well. After making a joke about his work as a guard, Hawk Sung confesses that he was the one who taught Ji-woo math and presents the printed thesis as proof that he didn't leak the test. He also reveals that it was Mr. Kim who leaked the test to his private students, which causes Mr. Kim to leave in anger and shame. Then, Hawk Sung shares part of his story. He defected from North Korea so he could study math properly because his own government was using his research to build weapons. He wants his math to be used to help people find jobs and get into good colleges, but that greed cost him his son's life. Hawk Sung is ashamed of his decisions, but Ji-woo never saw him that way and stayed loyal to his secret until the end, even if it meant risking his future. Crying, Hawk Sung apologizes and thanks Ji-woo for believing in him, and his speech makes Ji-Cole, who has been listening the whole time, leave without asking about the TV interview. He does, however, wait for Hawk Sung outside and offers him a ride after throwing away the smartphone he had gifted him. Ji-Cole reveals a little surprise for Hawk Sung: a new legal passport that marks him as a South Korean citizen, along with tickets for him to leave town so the niche can't find him for a while. Ji-Cole will probably get fired for it, but he thinks it's worth it. Sometime later, Ji-Cole visits Ji-woo to give him the gift Hawk Sung left for him, the famous pen and the first draft of his thesis. 3 years later, Ji-woo and his college class visit the prestigious Oberwolfach Research Institute for Mathematics. Hawk Sung works there now, and Ji-woo surprises him with some strawberry milk and a hug before diving into a long talk about math. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you can watch more videos like this. Thanks for watching.